Guardian, we've picked up a high-gain transmission. Origin point is somewhere along the coast, near the Cosmodrome.
What is up, Guardians? This is Cosmodrome Radio, broadcast on all frequencies from this crazy Russian spaceport all the way to Neomuna and back. We are trying to give everybody all the good news about Destiny 2 and all the great things when it goes on with it. This has been an interesting 2 weeks, not only from last week with the ability changes and different things that happened with that, and you heard our discussion last week with that. Now we have exotic changes and different things of that nature, plus hints for next season as well. We are going to be diving all into it. But don't forget, you can follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and Audible, iHeartRadio, Pandora, all those great places. We are everywhere except for SoundCloud, because SoundCloud is dead. You didn't hear me say that. But we're going to go ahead and dive into everything. If for some reason you cannot find us anywhere, go to cosmodromeradio.com. You can find every link there. And if you want to check out the podcast merch, go to shop.cosmodromeradio.com. Pick up a Guardian Games t-shirt or pick up the logo t-shirt or the logo hoodie. Shout out to some of our clan members of Clan Transmit for already picking up the merch. We will be posting them on social media once they get the merch. It's going to be really cool. So definitely want to be part of the community. Definitely join the Discord. Get some merch. Hang out with us. It's going to be a great time. And if you're looking for a clan, we got you. Join the Discord, be a fan, but also if you're looking for a clan, check out Clan Transmit, we got you. All right, my name is Panda the Paladin. To my left, because Alchemy is working his butt off at the Red Lobster, we called David in again to get his hunter expertise. And I feel like with the changes that are coming, there are going to be some spicy takes this evening. David, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad to be back, too. Look,
yeah.
We about to get spicy. I got some crazy takes I've been waiting to put on the table.
R.I.P. Stompies for the second time. R.I.P.
Throw them in the trash, man. I ain't used Stompies since what, year 2?
Okay. It's gonna be an interesting conversation then. All right. And then to my right, we have the woman who claims to be the best Sherpa in the entire D2 community. Out here taking care of people.
I do not.
Out here taking care of people with the hugs and whatnot. Tower Mom, how you doing?
Boy, don't be lying on me. I will freaking throw slippers at you.
Oh my
Don't
gosh.
you even.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, hon. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been an interesting 2 weeks. So whatever, like all the stuff that's been going on in the community has been very interesting. And then we have a special guest this evening, like someone that I've been admiring from some of their YouTube clips. Someone who is very dangerous with a glaive, and for some reason thinks using Rat King on a warlock is okay. But we'll get into that a different time here. Like ZayOsirisGaming, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. You just had to throw my Rat King in there.
Hey, man, I was like looking through clips the past like few weeks, and I was like, "You really out here with Rat King? Like, what is this? What is this savagery?"
Just synergize, and for me, that has always been my baby. Rat King and official glaive, both of those together just make the best combo for me.
Now, how do you feel about the seasonal glaive? Because like everyone's been kind of sleeping on it. But how do you feel about the seasonal glaive?
I feel like it's a good utility weapon. I don't think I'd personally consider it for PvP, mostly because projectile and range speed is sort of a big deal. And that's something that we can get into further into the podcast. Mm-hmm. But we'll definitely touch on base with that. But the glaive itself is nice. I love the aesthetic. I love the fact that you can kind of acquire it in all activities of the game. And it's a good entry weapon for people who aren't really familiar with its type. And I think they did a fantastic job in terms of design.
Definitely. I love the new perk they had. I forget what the name of it is, but it was the other one that wasn't destabilizing rounds, where you can block and just refill your ammo. That was so nice during the Proving Grounds GM, because they figured out that you could block the fireballs from the final boss with a glaive shield. So we were just tanking it and refilling the ammo off the perk. So I thought that was a really interesting way you could actually utilize that thing for newer players.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That's really freaking cool.
Glaive is not something anyone should really be sleeping on.
Yeah, honestly. But we're gonna go ahead and dive into it, and like we said, we were gonna touch on some of the ending stuff from last week's TWAB real quick. Then we're gonna dive into not only the article from yesterday, because Bungie just keeps forgetting that TWAB is on Thursday and just putting everything out on Wednesday now. But that's neither here nor there.
Right.
But from last week's trial, they had some announcements in regards to the like the new things that you can earn from Trials of Osiris. Not only is there a new ghost, there's a new ship, a new sparrow. The ship and the sparrow kind of feel like modifications to the last ones we got, but I dig it. I think it's really cool. We're getting a new shader for the first time in like several seasons. So it just, yeah. So like it just like I'm excited for the new loot, but I'm questionable about the changes.
For
So,
me,
like, yeah.
the loot in particular, I am very curious about its aesthetic approach. I love that they've kind of gone in several different ways in terms of Trials design. Where now it has like a golden beetle on the top. For me, it's very interesting. I would love to see what they would do with that design weapons going forward, but we can touch base on that hopefully and get a good slew of what they have in store.
Right. And in terms of the changes they are making to matchmaking, we already kind of saw the first lab that came out during week 8. That was a mess because for some, like, it was almost like the progression we had made with Fireteam matchmaking recently was sort of reversed, where a solo player had more of a chance to go flawless than a 3-stack. So there was like a almost total reverse. But the biggest problem that I have with the new matchmaking that they sort of introduced, that we touched on previously, is this whole idea that like, oh, the lesser skill players are in their own pool, and then until you have a flawed card, you're in this upper pool. There's no flawless pool no more. I think it's really flawed, because if we're not having card-based matchmaking, we're not having skill-based matchmaking. There was times during that weekend, like literally, I booted up my first Trials match. I went up against a 2.0 and a couple others that were on their lighthouse game. And I was very much like, what in the world is Bungie thinking with this matchmaking? Because you have people coming in on their first match of the entire card going up against like people going to the lighthouse. Like, it makes no fundamental sense from a skill perspective or a card perspective why that would be okay. Like, not even the double mercy they're adding can really like combat that. And I find them going, hey, we're gonna keep going with this despite like the entire community. There was even like pro players going, bring the flawless pullback, like literally. And I never thought I'd hear that, because I'm over here like been the biggest advocate for the flawless pull, and here we go. But like the people saying, hey, we don't like this, Bungie's like, no, we're going full speed ahead. And it's very odd. But them going, hey, we're going to make capture the permanent mode and call it Dominion, that I like, because it adds more challenge to Trials and not just be about elimination, because you can have different strategies like a bubble or a well, or like have different grenade launchers and different tools like that to like synergize. But I don't know. The matchmaking changes are very weird to me. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but I don't know.
Well, for me personally, I don't really mind the aesthetic of Trials changing and innovating and trying to rebrand itself in other ways. I do like that it has now gotten 2 essential modes where it's elimination, which is its tried and true variation, and now we have this version where you have to capture a point, assuming the match is taking much longer than intended. I see it more so as a safeguard for players that don't feel the need to camp or choose to camp, and it kind of slows things down. They've put a real emphasis on Trials being a very fast-paced, very active and involved game mode. So I do appreciate that in terms of where they're trying to take it. But I agree with what you said, where a lot of it does still feel a bit too experimental with the particular. And I think Trials has been around for over, 7 years now? I want to say 8, but no, I think it's been around for about 7 years now. We should be past the point of experimental. We should be at a point now where, at least in my opinion, where the experience should be pretty sound in where it wants to be. But I'm not a game dev, so I can't really say what their process is and what they undergo on a day-to-day base. Who's in, who isn't, comes and who goes. But it to me as a player, it feels like there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and that the direction may shift in various ways at different times because there are different individuals who have different sets of goals. And whether goals, are widespread and majority of players agree with it, I think that's the part where we're back in the experimental territory. And I don't think every avenue of the game should have that. I'm fine with labs in particular having this sort of thing. But imagine for a moment if strikes were taking a various amount of different directions, or if our story was taking a bunch of different experimental leaps. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to do that. It's just confusing to your player base where they're not certain of what sort of matchmaking experiences that they're going to have, or how the card is going to play out, where if you lose one or whether if you lose three, because that's sort of something that I believe that they were touching base on not too long ago. So they need a little bit more uniformity with the mode so that people aren't confused with what they're expected to get. And I think that's just something that most hardcore players are feeling. Because for me, I keep up with all the information as it comes out. So it can get a little confusing on what the matchmaking system is currently operating as, what it previously operated as, and what it may operate as next season. So it's a bit of a juggle.
Right. And honestly, I think the biggest component that I really noticed, especially when the flawless pool was in its like second season, well, I think it was like around towards the like plunder, like either plunder or haunted, where it was like it's like second season, where people I would like go into matchmaking with randoms, and they or like I would do LFGs, and they'd be like, so how does this matchmaking work, yada yada, and I'm like, you don't know how this works? Or like there would be LFGs where I'd say, ayo, flawless pool farming for adept weapons. Have people who don't even have full cards, who don't understand it. Because there's still people who never understood how the flawless pool worked. And it was very weird because I really feel as if Bungie needs more avenues besides the TWAB. And like, granted, the multiple articles has been kind of interesting, kind of like experimental. I think that. But like, there needs to be like, more pop-ups in the game that are like, hey, this is changing. Click on this to read or something similar. Like that would be very beneficial because some of these players don't leave their box. They turn their game on and that's it. So it just it's very interesting.
Your point, actually, not too long ago, I believe it was spoken in the community at a certain point in time. I want to say it was about maybe 2-3 seasons ago, where they were off about putting in possibly a bulletin board in the tower. That
Bob, that'd be a fantastic idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Players in game have a means to, actually address what's new. There's just a way to keep up with what has changed, what is changing in the future, what's currently active in the game. Just keep us involved so that way we don't have to leave the game in order to check, Bungie's Twitter account with various different things happening, because it's very easy to lose track of information. It's just we're constantly, every day, every second of the hour, something new is happening. So we just want to have point to and say, all right, this season, this is what's happening. This is what I should expect. And we eliminate any confusion that goes on within the mix, because there will be a ton of different players that played a few seasons back that know what the system was then, and come in and things are completely different for them. And it can be a deterrent of it in its own right, where players just don't feel encouraged to engage with these modes because they're not comfortable with where they may feel. So that's my
wow. That was a great way to put that. Tower, do you want to add anything to that before we move on? Because I love that.
No, I absolutely agree with the idea of a bulletin board. Like I apparently I didn't see that on my side of Twitter, because I would have been all for it, retweeting it, all that good kind of stuff. Like, yes, this is it. Like, because the thing is that like Bungie doesn't like to associate themselves with the idea that, frigging Destiny is an MMO. But that's what it is. It's an MMORPG with looter shooter elements. It's not primarily a looter shooter. And so a lot of MMO games, they do that. They have, their social space where everybody meets up, and there's always some sort of notification. It's perfect. But if Bungie doesn't lean into that, then the community is just caught off guard in a lot of different ways, or they're just completely just they have no idea what's going on. And Bungie needs to understand that, like, not everyone has Twitter, not everyone has Reddit, not everyone, does even reads the TWAB. So why not have, like a Sparks Notes of the TWAB on a bulletin board in the tower next to Zavala, or like right before you get to Rahul. Get rid of those people that have been welding that one chip for the past however many years and put a bulletin board there, right when you spawn in the tower. Those poor folks just welding
Just put the
chip.
in front of Cade's grave.
Yeah, right. Cade would have loved that too. He would have put a freaking bulletin board right in front of his ugly mug, as you would say.
Oh my dear.
Y'all know I'm not lying.
I mean, you're not wrong. David, you got anything?
I have quite a few thoughts on the topic, actually.
Go for it.
Ooh.
So, when it comes down to the changes that they're making for trials, right? And specifically, I remember you guys talking about the lab that they had a couple weeks back. One big issue that I don't think a lot of people took into account was that a lot of players kind of learned a lot from that very first iteration of Trials when they introduced Fire Team matchmaking. So I think that had a lot to do with how the lab played out, when a lot of teams realized, hey, it's a lot easier to go flawless in a duo than it is in a trio or as a single, right? So a lot of teams decided to go in duo that really just threw off the entire like algorithm, because unless you had a dedicated team that was about it, that knew that they could go flawless, like you weren't running trios.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of teams that I know run together, just duo up and then go through that way. Because it's easy matches. Like, you have a bunch of solo players who really aren't that good at the game, and for all intents and purposes, they're like blueberries. And it's really just gambling on, is the other team going to get the good blueberry or not? Because if
That's
you get
honestly
the
how
good,
it comes off, yeah.
Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
exactly. Like, look, hey, if I get the good team
I admit
member,
my faults.
we can win. Hey, and I feel like a lot of people took advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
And on one hand, I can agree with it in the sense that, hey, any advantage you can get, people are always going to take.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just how the game works. That's just how it's played. But also, when it comes down to trials, I don't really think a lot of people really think about the fact that, for lack of a better word, most players don't even engage with trials without an actual reason. Like a legitimate, like, it's got to be a good weapon.
I need
It's
to have
gotta
a
be a
reason to go
better
into
map.
trials on.
Like,
Here's one thing.
nobody wants to spend their time. Let me take that back. Not nobody. The average player hears about the toxicity of trials and just how like over the top sweaty it is, and they're deterred from even getting in to even try their hand at it, because they're like, I'm not gonna go flawless. I'm just gonna get stomped on. So what's the point? And then those players don't engage, and then you turn around, and then you have the players who are like, I can try. They get in and they get like ran over because of these duos and trios, and they have a bad experience. And then Bungie's answer to that is, hey, we're going to make a place for you to practice. But also, if there's not enough players, we'll just feed you to the lion and throw you in these matches.
See, I'm gonna let Zay speak, but I have thoughts on what you just said.
So, like, and to those players, like, I am a firm believer in the fact that there's no reason to do trials unless you're either going in to farm on a 7-win card, or you're attempting to go flawless, or you're going into like farm experience for Saint. But other than that, if you don't come in with those 3 express like objectives, any loss is going to reset your card, and it might take you 2, 3, 4 hours, an entire play session, just to get to 5 wins. And if you get to that
Yeah,
5
he's not
wins and
wrong.
reset, your whole play time is irrelevant now. You've wasted your time, in my opinion, because you spent 5, 6, 8, 9 hours trying to go flawless to get an adept weapon, right?
Right.
But you only get the adept weapon once you get to the lighthouse. Up until that point, it's just resources. So if you want to get resources, you could go do PvE stuff and get it way faster and get way larger quantities of it with way less stress than you would get if you go through trials and you're resetting your card every 2 to 3 wins. Like, I don't want to sound like a defeatist or anything, but I feel like
you're absolutely right. Now,
Yeah.
here's I want to point to that though, because to an extent, you're right. There are only but a few categories of players who are going in with a set goal. There aren't too many players who are going in to dip their toe to figure out what Trials is for them. They also don't have a lot of practice in just, competitive play in general. It takes time to get used to Destiny as a system, as a new player. This is something that we've been doing for a long time. It's second nature. It's muscle memory. So when we go in, we already know how to play, what we're playing, and how we're going to support our team, whether if it's blueberries or on mic. So here's my thing. Bungie needs to do a little bit more in terms of what they offer to new players as they experience.
Yep.
I agree.
To go is 100% true. They need a practice mode, something that players can go into, that they can shoot at, that they can identify with as a PvP target, to give them the confidence to say, okay, my shots are feeling right, my aim is feeling right, my weapon feels the way that I want it to feel. I don't feel so out of the loop when I go in now. There's a little bit more to what I'm doing. And even when I think about it as a player of myself, when I first went into Trials, we all back then knew what PvP was, but we didn't really know how the mode was going to play out or how the experience was going to feel when we got to the lighthouse. And I can tell you this much. I've only went to the lighthouse one time in Destiny 1. And I tried my absolute hardest every week to go through and earn that title until I finally did. So I don't want to undermine player intent or players, tenacity, because they will try, even if they're bad at the game, even if they don't have the resources that I feel that they should have, and I think most people do. They're going to keep trying. They're going to rematch, and they're going to eventually get to the point where they can say to themselves that they are now good players. And that in its own right is, kind of beautiful. You can look at it and say that, you had a bad team who wasn't exactly great, which I agree. It can be a little bit unfair for us as pro players or us as decent players to have to carry our teammates. Or, even on the other end of the spectrum, it's not exactly great for us to just steamroll them. So I get where the system split makes sense, but it's also a give or take scenario where, yes, you've gotten them in their own pool, but you've also gotten us in our own pool. And I think this is a problem because these players do not have proper training. And they're give them training by splitting the pool. That's not what I think we should do. I think just keeping the pools together is where we should, really focus our efforts. Not where if someone is on a 7-win card and someone is on a 1 or a negative. And I don't think they should ever meet. I do think that when you are on your first 4 games, you're going to match other players within that same spectrum. Once you get into the 5 to 7, you start matching other players within that spectrum. And it should prioritize connection. I don't think prioritizing player skill is something that I really want to put a lot of focus on, or maybe they could do a hybrid system of the two. But ultimately, I think that's the major issue, is that players aren't going in with the proper set of skills. And Bungie has offered a Band-Aid to the problem, but they're not addressing the problem, which is the player.
So you have some good points. Before I go over my 2 things that I want to say, I'm gonna equate everybody with what the lab and what next season's new matchmaking is gonna be real quick, because like it has been a minute. So there will be 2 dedicated soft pools known as Challenger Pool and Practice Pool. Under ideal circumstances, the 2 pools won't merge, but if there is a chance that merging the 2 pools will yield quicker matchmaking, the system will do so. The Challenger Pool will include players who regularly play Trials of Osiris and Destiny 2. This pool will be based entirely on the connection of the player and will not be affected by the number of wins they have on a particular card or their skill. Players who have a card with no losses will be placed in this pool. The practice pool, on the other hand, is aimed at players who have a little to no experience in Trials of Osiris. This pool will match players on how they perform on a weekly basis and their connection. Ideally, players will be placed in this pool during their first match of the week, or they will or they have a flawed card. This pool also has stop protection if a player is constantly performing bad. Now, here's the thing. What Bungie doesn't seem to understand based on what this system is going to be is that Trials players aren't going to just ride a flawed card. Like, unless it's specifically for you've already gone flawless and you're farming the flawless pool, like in the current system, or if you're just like, you have a trial, you have a trials passage of wealth and you're just farming rank. There's no reason to ride a flawed card, because the point of Trials of Osiris is to go flawless. There's no point to that. So this system is already flawed out of the get-go, because what is someone going to do with a flawed card? They're going to reset said flawed card and try to go flawless, because the point is to get to the glorious lighthouse is to go flawless. So this system is very flawed from the jump. And like, regardless of how people feel about connection-based matchmaking versus skill-based matchmaking, I think the core issue that Bungie still hasn't addressed, and why they're introducing this band-aid, which I love the ways they put that, is they're not making the other things in PvP appealing. The reason why I say that is because look at Comp right now. Comp is a lawless, crazy wonderland where people can still use things like Mountaintop and Revoker because it's not light enabled, but it has ladder matchmaking, so you're facing people in gold tier, bronze tier, silver tier, adept tier, all the way up to ascendant tier, but you still can use any weapon regardless of its sunset. You can still use those weapons. That was why the second week of Comp having the new reward system with Rose, they had to nerf Revoker from Beyond the Grave and say, we're not going to, we're going to change it. That way it's not being abused in PvP. And that's the core issue at the heart, is we have too many modes that are not light enabled. Any competitive mode, whether it be Comp, whether it should be Trials of Osiris, I'm the one that still says it, Iron Banner should be light enabled, because the control playlist should always be open whether Iron Banner exists or not. And that should be where free play is. That should be where casual players go to get their pinnacles, to get their rewards, to farm the seasonal weapon, whatever. That should be where you go to practice. But there also should be elimination, how there used to be, where elimination was a staple. It was always there. Elimination should be your stepping stone to then going into Trials of Osiris, or elimination and Dominion in a rotational pool where you could go and trade for Trials of Osiris in that system. But Bungie never told anybody that. That's how it used to be prior to Witch Queen, where you had elimination, rumble, control, and then like Trials of Osiris, and like the weekly experimental mode like Mayhem and stuff like that. And then Iron Banner would rotate in. But we're not, like, there's no system. Once you do that like opening mission for Shaxx, where he's like, play a control match and then play 3 comp matches, Shaxx don't want nothing to do with you no more. He says the Crucible beckons Guardian, that's it. Like that's all he does. He'll give you some engrams, and that's it. So it really feels like Bungie needs to reevaluate how they guide players, because they, to Dava's point, Dava like it says there's not like a whole lot of players that want to play Trials. You know how many people I see walking into Trials of Osiris with PvE mods on that have no idea what they're doing? They have no
Me.
concept. They have no concept of what's going
Me,
on.
hi.
They just heard there was good loot. They just heard there
Yeah.
was good loot and they would have come through. But like,
Exactly.
but the alternative to that is there should be like, we need to get like weapons for loot out of Trials of Osiris in general. We need to like eliminate that because that takes away like less stress on the player base, because then they can go, hey, I can play control to get a messenger, but then there's a messenger adept in comp that I can get if I rank up. That would make a lot more sense. Not, hey, like if you go flawless in Trials of Osiris, you get a Sparrow, or you get a Shader, or you get like an Ascended Shard. Like that would make a lot more sense from if you are a high tier sweat player. That makes sense if you want the Trials of Osiris armor or emblems or shaders or sparrows or ships. That makes sense. But in terms of the casual, that's the only reason why you see casuals in Trials of Osiris, because they heard there was good loot. One of the streamers go Immortals good. The streamers go
You
the
gotta
freaking
have this new weapon.
Mhm.
FOMO everywhere.
And you can only get it in trial.
Heck, to this day, Arctic Haze for Beyond Light and Summoner, up until Ambit came out, they were the only solar auto rifles that you could obtain. And then Ambit came out, and it was like, oh wow, we have a solar auto rifle that isn't in Trials of Osiris or in an expansion. You could get a solar auto rifle. So like that, I remember back when, because they had rotated Summoner out of the Trials pool, and I was like, oh, it'd be really nice if I had like a solar auto rifle for like match game and stuff like that. Arctic Haze, but the pool of perks it has is garbage. Like
Absolute
what am I supposed to do with
trash.
that? So it's just like I feel like if we readjust, if we change the reward system, we start going back to light enabled content, and we actually make comp be competitive, it would give people a reason to play competitive. You had like, if you go into competitive, you could get like an adept weapon, you could get like comp armor, you could get like comp rewards, and then like, but then there's still a chance, like say if I rank up in bronze to silver, there's a chance I get an adept weapon, but it's only if I rank up. There's a chance if I like then if it's garbage, it's garbage. I have no control if it's garbage. Like that makes more sense to my brain than them going, hey yo, sweat and get flawless in Trials of Osiris against some of the worst players in the game.
So the way that I've seen it, I don't mean to cut anybody
Worst
off.
as in most toxic, by the way.
I feel like the way to fix Trials, you could fix it by simply merging the pools, making it connection based, right? Make it connection based. Let the players that enjoy the game mode have their fun. Because right now, as it stands, they're not happy because they are shackled to the floor so that other people can at least come in and somewhat get stuff done. But if you take away their need to make sure that other players get stuff out of it, then you can just let them run rampant, let them have fun.
Exactly.
Take away the need to do that. But what I would suggest is to, instead of when you level up Saint, you get a regular version of whatever the new adept, whatever the new trials weapons are, right? Make it to where on your first reset of Saint, you get the non-adept version, but on your second reset, you get an adept version of both weapons. That would then allow players to then turn in flawed cards to go buy them.
Well, not only that,
what it does, you still gotta play 7 wins, and you gotta have the resources to buy it, and then just make going flawless fun. Put stuff in there, shaders, emblems. I've often said they should make like a really cool flawless set of armor for people to go and chase, stuff like that. Like, but I think too many people hold flawless adept weapons as the Trials trophy. It is in of itself the identification of status to too many players. They look at it as, this is my reward, is that I get better weapon so that I can flex how many better weapons I have. Whilst other people are using the normal weapon, I get to have the better weapon for me in the rest of the game.
But even then,
You know,
like the hot take that no one wants to hear, and the thing that Bungie doesn't explain to nobody, which I was talking to the clan about this when it came to like Grandmasters versus Master. The Adept isn't that different than the regular. It's not like, oh, if I get the Adept, I get like 20 freaking range on it. No, it has a little bit of a difference, and it can hold Adept mods. Whoop-de-doo, you get Adept mods. It's like, oh, like I think it's like 10 bonus. But even then, like to this day, you still see people with regular messengers, regular Eyes of Soul, regular Shira's Wrath, or like regular palindromes, like etc. You have regular versions of guns that dominate. To this day, with Trials Report, I was looking at Trials Report, and for like the last 2 months, regular Immortal and Immortal Adept are all cranking people to death. Like I think Immortal and Immortal Adept alone have had the most kills in the history of Trials of Osiris in its existence. Both of them, not just the Adept, both of them. So it feels like that's the one thing that I not only with the reward thing of guiding players, Bungie needs to explain to people, hey, yo, this gun is just as good, if not only a little bit lesser than the Adept one. Your heart, like you're not gonna be like losing out the world if you don't get the Adept. Like it's okay.
Well,
I
I'm
agree.
piggyback for you raise a good point, because not only are Adept weapons not as prestigious as they once were, I'm more impressed by people who actually go and craft enhanced versions of the guns now instead. Like the craft hold more prestige than Adept weapon, because not only do you need to get the Adept weapon, but you also need to get the Adept mod to make that weapon in the way that you want, versus just collecting the resources and going to the crafting table and making the weapon you really want to use. Like Brigand's Law right now, that I use 99% of the times more than I use my Forgiveness Adept sidearm. It's a good weapon, but the Brigand's Law is exactly the way that I want it to be. So that means I get to use it more often. With Brigand's Law, you really don't had that sort of, inconsistency.
And honestly, Brigand's Law is a better perk pool than Forgiveness.
Yeah, it does. It does. Forgiveness is a good weapon, but you also have to give your experience to chance. So you don't really know what you're going to get for the time that you invest in it. So when I see somebody with an Adept weapon, again, it really doesn't really sing I'm a great player. It just sings that, maybe I got carried, or maybe I was just consistent. It's just we have other avenues to flex. And I feel like that should.
Exactly. I perfectly agree. I can't say it any better.
I like that we got to a pretty neutral point. So let's go ahead and move on from last week real quick before I go any further. Zay, why don't you give people your origin story when it comes to Destiny? Like when the ghost woke you up, what made you want to care about this game, and how far have you come?
Okay, so the very first experience I had with Destiny 2 was actually during its early press reveal, when they were showcasing a lot of what the game was. For me, I had seen it and immediately drew the comparison to Halo. So it was already appealing right out the get-go, because I grew up playing Halo, and that was something that I had as a child, and along with many other games back when. It was just, it felt great to shoot, it felt great to play, and it had a lot of nostalgia to it. So Destiny, when it was first shown, it still had that nostalgic vibe, even when it was new. So when I got my hands on it and finally had a chance to play and was, offered the selection of Titan, Hunter, and Warlock, it was a very crossroad moment, especially looking back at it now, because I really don't know what sort of player I would be if I picked any of the other two aside from Warlock. So when I first got into the mission and it rose me up and it started, playing me through all the mini points on how the game worked, I wasn't really invested right away. I was like, you know what? This game feels good, but it's not really what I thought it would be, until I threw my first Nova Bomb. I don't know what. I don't know what that moment that just made me say this game is fucking awesome. Excuse my language.
Oh, you're
But
fine.
sense because I think it was the audio design in combination with the visuals and the explosions of what I just did. And I don't even think I really knew how I did it right away because at the time I'm trying to remember whether or not if it had a prompt for me to do it or if I just put the two and two together and did it. But it was a very strong moment there. And all I wanted to do after that was discover more of the game going forward.
Heck
So
yeah.
eventually, having a couple of years under my belt, getting Sherpa'd myself into different raids and playing through House of Wolves and everything, I actually joined a Facebook group back when. This was early, I want to say 2015, 2016. And from there on, I met up with a couple of friends there, and then we opened up together and we all started moderating it. And it's actually one of the biggest ones on Facebook today. And we help people every day that come in who need help and they need to get a little bit of experience on different mechanics or different activities, or just even for me personally, I like to showcase a lot of fashion throughout the week or specifically on Fridays. So
Wow.
I found myself in most comfortable where when new Guardians come up or when new players come in, I'm like, hey, what class do you pick? I can make you look the best. So
All right.
Fashion, the true end game. Also, Warlock brother. Thank you. Not the only Warlock sitting in here right now. Without me being gone.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into this week because yesterday Bungie kind of like shook up the sandbox but then like didn't do enough shaking, in my opinion, because it was like, hey, you did some stuff that we've been asking for like a century, but then they changed a couple other things, but then they didn't do enough, and I'm like, okay, like it's very interesting. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing that we got was on Wednesday was the exotic changes. And we're going to go down each list, we'll talk about it, and we'll go from there. So, Atheris Embrace. Gain additional strength while the exotic weighted knife is damage bonus is active. This is going to get nerfed real quick. I can tell you already.
Hunters get nerfed instantly. But I think it might be a little underwhelming. Because
okay, speak on it.
It's gonna, so when I think about an exotic, right? You have to weigh, is it worth wasting your exotic slot on a mediocre buff or a mediocre kind of like extra ability? That's the reason why I think, what is it, Shinobu's Vow. Fantastic exotic. It's really sitting in a really good place.
Right.
But would I run that over Liar's Handshake or what is it, Assassin's Cow or Star Eater Scales? Probably not.
Nope.
Not unless I'm trying to run like a grenade build, but like it's not in a place where it's competitive in the meta. And I think that's where Arthur's Embrace is gonna sit.
But like I feel as if the buff that it gives you where you're generating weighted knives like too much ends up being a problem because it already has a second bounce to it. So if we end up in a world where people are just chucking bounce knives every 2 seconds, that's gonna get really annoying. So like I think there was someone on Twitter who said, wait till season 22, it's gonna get nerfed. So like I'm willing to see where it goes, but I don't know about that one.
I'm hoping Bungie had enough foresight in terms of how the players interact with the sandbox now. And they said, okay, these changes are going to only offer a minimal benefit to the exotic, where it's more than what it had because it didn't have it before. But it's not so much that it becomes the dominant choice or the only choice. Because I really don't like a sandbox where there is a weapon, there is a armor that you have to have for every activity. That for me is poor balance and poor design. So I'm hoping.
I completely agree.
I totally agree. Moving on to the next one that I am stressed. Oathkeepers. So with Oathkeepers, they're making it when fully drawn, bows gain bonus damage against combatants that increase as you hold the draw but deactivates after a few seconds. So basically, for a few seconds, if you like wait a few seconds and then it deactivates, you get like one shot potential with the Monarch. And I'm like, oh no. Like that's terrifying.
Yeah.
That's the one I'm looking forward to the most.
I'm really concerned because like the Monarch has been a sleeper, like a right under the top 10 of trials every week for like months and months and months, to the point that everyone's like nerf the Monarch, because if you get a clean headshot, the poison can bring you to almost like death, if not full death. So when it comes to high tier PvP right now, the Monarch is very much a secondary choice to every hunter. So when you see Oathkeepers now, it's gonna be, oh, so you're just one-shotting everybody. And it's really concerning.
Right.
You know?
Though honestly, I'm not even really afraid of Le Monarch. I'm actually more afraid of two other options. The first,
I really want to hear, because I was just about to say a similar thing. Come with.
The other two options I feel like may actually end up being more threatening in the sandbox is Wishender. Wishender and Trinity Ghoul.
Yes.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
I can see Wishender. Trinity Ghoul, I don't know about, but Wishender, I'm worried. I can see the worry, because wall hacks plus one-shot potential could get really scary.
Yeah, because it already hits harder than any other bow in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now that it has anti-barrier potential, it's kind of I see the concern. Okay, yeah. So Oathkeepers is already on the chopping block of you need to go down. I will say, if Wishender doesn't get nerfed, Le Monarch's gonna end up getting nerfed, because this is gonna expose the fact that Bungie's been ignoring people saying nerf Le Monarch for like months. So that's gonna be a fun time. Raiju's Harness. When deactivating your arc super, you create a blinding explosion that temporarily increases your arc weapon damage. However, blocking with Whirlwind Guard will no longer consume energy more slowly. So basically, they just said, "Hey, yo, you can cancel with Raiju's Harness and make an explosion and get increased arc weapon damage, but you don't get to slow your stuff anymore." Because that was starting to be a problem when Arc 3.0 came out. Like every hunter would like hot swap to Raiju's and then just run around and block everything. So thankfully, they introduced the exotic swap thing. But now this is gonna like permanently ground the idea that they can just walk around with Whirlwind Guard and block everything the entire round. So I dig that.
I dig it. I think it's mostly a good change as well.
Okay. Any thoughts, Hunter made?
I'll be honest with you. Like in PvP, maybe that might get some play, but that's the only place it'll see play. Honestly.
I mean, that blinding guard can be kind of handy for PvE too, though, because like that could be really like a reason to run Raiju's in PvE.
Nobody's gonna pick regular Arc Staff over Gathering Storm.
That's fair.
With like the niche is kinda there. Maybe if they buff Arc Staff as a super and give it a reason to be ran, but as the sandbox is right now, ease of use of Gathering Storm, I can just fucking throw it and keep going and let it do its thing. Put on like fucking Star Eater scales, and yeah, there's really no point in Raiju's
I like
Harness.
what they were doing with some of the roaming supers in general, applying a lot of different verbs. I feel like with Arc Strider or Arc Staff in particular, you know the final blast that you make when you finish a combo? I feel like that combo at the very end of it should have a verb attached to it. In PvE anyway, because I know that blast will just one-shot anything in PvP, so it won't really make much of a difference with a verb applied to it, but I feel like it would do itself justice in PvE if it had something there too.
I can see like Jolt
That's
or
fair.
Brine. I can see it.
All right. Radiant Dance Machines. Kills while your free dodge is active extend the duration of the free dodger. No longer deactivates when you get too far away from enemies. Deactivates after using a suspending slam. So
Listen to me.
Okay.
$20. I put $20 down right now. That takes a nerf. First week.
See,
guaranteed.
What was so funny is when Radiant Dance Machines came back from D1, it caught a nerf within the first week. They had to deactivate it because you could dodge so much with it. You got like not only were you constantly freezing people with stasis, but you generated your super so fast in certain activities that people were walking into Gambit and then invading off rip with super. Like that was disgusting.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
So
it was gross. As the resident Gambit main, that was the grossest thing ever. And I have words about Hunter Supers and Gambit, but we're not going to go there because we've heard my words and we're not talking about Gambit.
So like,
Listen
I think them eliminating the having to stand by enemies is good because that was kind of annoying and that's what made people not want to mess with radiant dance machines. But I think the kills refreshing the free dodge might be a problem.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think people quite grasp the like utility of it because this isn't like it only has a restriction for one subclass, but it's definitely gonna need one for Arc. I'm already cooking a build in my head right now, specifically for it, just to have like we are combination blow, but disorienting blow just in rolling the fuck around, punching the shit, blinding the shit out of people.
Yep.
It's
All
gonna
right.
be nasty.
All right.
That
All
with
right.
the fact that I'm gonna be jolting the fuck out of people everywhere because unless they make it to where that dodge doesn't reset that other aspect, our country is gonna be a problem.
It
I
probably
see it
will.
already.
Uh-huh.
Now, here's the one that's got every motherfucker upset. Let's get into it. Let's get
I
into
have
it.
words, and I'm not
I
even
have so many
Hunter.
words.
I
I
have
have so many
so
words.
many words.
This is gonna be a great conversation. So, Stompies. Removed airborne effectiveness penalties. You only gain increased speed, slide distance, and improved jumping while your dodge energy is full. Now, real quick before I let everyone else go off. Hey, yo, hunters, and this is excluding David because he hates zombies. PvP hunters, especially you PvP hunters that like sweat so much that all you know how to do is mash your X or your A button or your space bar. Get bent because y'all were hating on us for shoulder charge.
Calm the F
Damn,
down.
I see.
Also,
I
like,
think this is gonna be an issue.
So like no, because like here's my hot take that like no one wants to hear. To this day, I'm looking at Trials report right now. To this day, Stompies makes up for 10.8% of the used exotic. It is the most used exotic in PvP for hunters to this day, especially even after the introduction of airborne effectiveness. It still remained one of the most used exotic. Even though you saw things like young Ahamkara Spine come out, which we will get to in a minute. You saw things like Wormhusk come back, or Backers come back, or Spine come back. You still saw Stompy sit at the top of the board because of how much utility it offers you. You don't see things like transversive steps. Well, transversive steps is up there because of the speed, because of the friggin' speed boost. But like, you don't see Lion Rampants up here. You you don't see Wings of Sacred Dawn up here. No, you don't.
I mean,
You see Stompies up here because Stompies lets you do so much as just base level. And people are like, well, it's a utility, it's a neutral game exotic. Do you know how much hate Titan neutral game exotics get? Like Peacekeepers, Doom Marchers, Synthoceps, and Deus Wards, One-Eye Mask, like all these neutral game exotics that have nothing to do with elemental based stuff. Hunters hate. But when people are like, yo, Stompies are a problem, and they're like, well, why can't you just look upward and shoot us? Because the problem is, for some reason, Bungie thought it was a good idea to make it so you can jump over people 15 feet in the air, have perfect accuracy with a shotgun, and kill someone before they can flick their stick up and aim at you. Like,
right?
Huh?
Yep. That's exactly.
Not only that.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have weapons in the game that don't even require aim to begin with. Like a grenade launcher is a good example of that. So airborne effectiveness doesn't really have any way on that.
Exactly.
So whether somebody jumps in the air and then blasts you, they're still descending. By the time they hit the ground, the player has already basically lost the duel because they have no health. Anything will pick them off. So that's why stuff like sidearms and like SMGs have become popular because they don't have as much of a penalty from the air, especially when you're doing blinting. So it didn't really solve the problem. It just gave it a new problem.
And not only that, if a hunter runs because I remember last week everyone was saying, well, if a Titan runs 100 strength, they won't have any problem with their shoulder charge. Listen here, bucko. If you run 100 mobility, you shouldn't have no problems with getting your dodge back, right? All right.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Like, honestly, when you think about it, this really isn't a nerf to Stompies.
It
it's an
isn't.
inconvenience. It's a grounding, if you
Yep.
will, in
It,
my
it,
opinion, because your dodge
no,
comes
it's
back
not
like
even that.
once every
It's not
15,
even
20
that.
seconds.
Something like that.
So
But even
like
but yeah.
Go ahead.
It's
No, you're the hunter, man. Go for it. You're the hunter, man. Go for it.
So the way I look at it is, the thing that makes Stompies good is not its ability, right? Its perk that makes it overpowered. Because you could give Stompies to Blueberry and they won't know like how to use it. You could tell them what to do with it, but there is a large skill ceiling to being able to use Stompies the way that pisses everybody else off effectively. Like all it does is boost your jump and your slide. Like it just makes being a hunter a little bit easier. But you still have to have the FPS skills and reflexes to really take advantage of it. Like honestly, I feel like people use it because there aren't any really good hunter exotics that really change your gameplay enough to warrant using it versus most hunters relying on their like FPS reflexes in PvP. Like, yeah, you got young arm car spine, but that's just throw a grenade. But you still gotta
Don't say that.
rely on your.
Don't say that. Don't say that because
You
Spine can one shot. Spine
it
has
can
one
one shot
shot
you.
potential.
Yeah.
It can
Spine's one of
one
the few.
shot you, but that's the
Yeah.
same as like Titan Peregrine Greaves, right? Like I have to waste an exotic slot just to be able to get that.
But
Right?
even then,
And so it
if you
kind of
compare it to
levels out.
Peregrine Greaves, if you compare it to Peregrine Greaves, though, I have to make sure that I jump to trigger it. All you have to do is chuck a grenade downfield, and as long as you hit a wall, you have one shot potential.
Right.
I mean, but
And
it
of
gotta
course,
land
Warlocks
it the
don't have
right
any
way.
one-shot potential.
Nope.
I agree.
Hell,
Yeah,
we
so
can't even
also
use
kind
stun
of
bracers in freaking PvP.
The last time we had
Our
one-shot
our
potential
one
was when we had
good.
handheld Supernova, and we all know how that
right now, y'all have one shot potential with Lightning Surge. So don't think you're out of the woods
Uh,
yet.
yeah.
y'all got
I
that.
know we
Y'all
Lightning
got
Surge
the
can take out a whole
getaway artist.
team.
uh,
Lightning
Come
Surge can
on.
take out a whole team in PvP. So don't, no, y'all ain't out the woods. But in
Like,
terms of this,
and
I think the biggest thing that I want to say to hunters is there were like y'all had so much to say about shoulder charge. Now you got your comeuppance, but also you get your dodge back so fast. There's not going to be a problem. You have, and also to throw another boat at you. Y'all had so much to say about barricade getting nerfed, and you're like, oh well, now you have to build into resilience to make sure your barricade comes back. Cool. Now you have to build into into mobility for your dodge to come back, which almost every hunter did. It's just now because of the new mod system, you don't have powerful friends to lean on. So now you actually have to build into your stuff correctly, and you're sad about it.
that's not exactly a 1-to-1 fair.
How is that not fair?
Like, and I say that as a hunter main, right? Mobility is today what resilience was like years ago. It
Explain.
is a useful stat. Don't get me wrong. It allows you to be more mobile with your straight speed, and it gives you a little extra oomph in your jump. But are you really willing to risk your recovery, your grenade, or your fucking ability to like take gunfire? Because if you got like a 1 or 2 in Rezeal, you're gonna hate your fucking life. If you got a 1 or 2 in your recovery, you're gonna hate your life. You're gonna hate your life if you don't have any discipline. The only other dump stat that hunters have is intellect. And if you're running PvP, chances are you're not gonna be trying to dump that either, because that's a game changing, tide changing tool.
I
So
mean,
you don't want that
I
high
can get
too.
behind that.
Maybe like you might be able to, confuffle with strength a little bit there, because we have our hunter dodge, but like hunters are the only class that really struggle to get like quad 100s or what is it like triple 100s,
trips.
because
I
we
mean, at that
always
point,
have to account for having some mobility and not being able to dump any other stat. Like hell, we were playing Ball of Glass the
I
other
actually
day.
have an interesting proposal for this sort of thing. It's been on my
I feel like we're about to say the same thing. I'm excited to see what you say.
Yeah.
Just make class ability its own stat. That's what I think they should do. Just make class ability its own stat. Like, stop tying it to recovery because some warlocks don't even go into recovery. Stop putting it in resilience because resilience is a like literal defense stat. But stop tying it to mobility because mobility doesn't really have any relevance anymore. Like, have class ability be its own stat that you have to spec into.
Or what if, for example, they instead tied your class ability stat to the intellect stat?
Ooh.
So you saying class ability and super regen?
Yeah.
Yep, they both apply the same.
Ooh.
That would free up the resilience slot. That would free up the recovery slot, and that would free up the mobility slot. And not only that, here's my second proposal. What if instead of mobility-based exotics that increase your speed and slide distance and jump height, what if instead the mobility stat was responsible for that in and of itself? So let's say, for example, you're a hunter and you invest all of your resources into mobility. So you're sitting at 100. That would be the equivalent or greater than something like Stompies. So that way you don't have to rely on the exotic itself to actually provide these benefits. In fact, the exotic can then just augment some other aspect of your ability to move. Like take Bones of Ao, for example, for hunters, where they had an additional jump. That way you're not really busting the exotic, you're just giving them more to work with. So that way the actual mobility value in other ways for every class. This also frees up stuff like, Dune Marchers. It frees up stuff like Transversal Steps. So that way they're not just solely reliant on what they can do. You can do these things without the exotic. So that way it becomes more, accessible for all players.
That makes a lot of sense. All right.
That leads me to one of my most controversial opinions that'll probably get me strung up somewhere by all the Titan mains.
Okay, go for it.
Look, I am of the opinion that
warrior for this boy.
Because of Strand, hunters deserve to get a version of the Twilight Garrison for hunters.
Oh. Really?
Yes.
You already get 2 grapples. Explain.
We get 2 grapples, but that's exactly why, right? Remember when we had the discourse? I knew he was gonna say that. Remember when we had the discourse about Icarus Dash and Twilight Garrison? What did Bungie say? They said this is a part of the Warlock identity.
Yeah.
Right? It's supposed to be a part of their kit because their kit was designed for aerial combat. Right? That is what Strand is for hunters. Strand is the hunter aerial combat class. That is what it's supposed to be with the double grapple. Boom, boom. But when you're in the air as a hunter, you are at your weakest when you're in the air. Yeah. Because you're either going to go up or you're going to go down. You moving around any other plane of existence is your shit. You're just fucked up. And that's why people
I wouldn't mind even if they gave them somewhat of a Wings of Sacred Dawn situation, where it's not exactly Twilight Garrison, but it's not exactly Wings, it's something in between. So there is some form of control and, directional movement with what you're doing. Because I agree. Because if they want you to be in the air, there needs to be a reason for that. A little bit more than what they provide to the class currently. Like Strand on every class is fantastic. I don't think we could really argue that. Yeah. But that doesn't mean we can't lean more into what the class identity is trying to, apply. Sorry for tweaking.
I think my biggest concern, I agree with you that it makes sense from like a theoretical level. My biggest concern though is you as hunters, I've kind of already been dabbling in other people's pie because because similar to how Titans just got their own dodge, y'all just got Blink back from D1 when the Warlocks got Blink for Void.
Yeah.
They just gave you Blink back. So very much it very much has me kind of debating, going how many different things are you going to want to steal from the Warlock kit? You know what I mean?
Well, it's not so much about stealing it from the kit, right? hunters are supposed to be a mobility class, right? And if Strand is going to be our aerial combat class, like having aerial mobility options is essential. I think it's essential to the
Okay,
class.
so here's what
Having
I'm.
the ability to dodge, not even like all kinds of crazy shenanigans in the air, just having the ability to move laterally, aerial in like the air would benefit the hunter class, and it just adds to the flair of like the whole Spider-Man dynamic that we're supposed to be. Being able to twist and flip in the air, to have a little bit of mobility and a little bit of like evasion
Right.
options in the air.
Okay, so
You know, like
Overlord, I have a question for you specifically about this then. How would you
go right ahead.
feel if Bungie then, to your point, made an aspect that allowed the hunter to create anchor points at the enemies that they defeat? For example, let's say you're using a strand weapon and you defeat someone, whether it be precision final blow or just a final blow in general. When you do, it creates a strand anchor point for your grapple hook to hook to that enemy's point to then move into their location once you defeat them. And this could be infinitely refreshed among many different enemies that you defeat, PvE or PvP. How do you think that would support the mobility gain for the hunters?
I think it would actually be pretty good. I think the grapple is actually pretty like responsive. It
Mhm.
might take a little bit of practice, but you know, what's it? I used to say, fucking skills and rewards, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I would like that. If we can't get Twilight Garrison, something like that would be useful.
Right,
I
because
can
I
dig it.
Okay.
think it would also play well into the exotic, where when you use your
Mhm.
grapple hook, you gain woven mail. So it has a lot of value in something like PvE, where once you take down enemies and you want to push forward, because that's often what we're doing. When we're in PvP, we're beating enemies and we're moving through them. If you have an anchor point, you can always confidently grab onto it, move into the crowd, use the melee to create threadlings and just decimate anything nearby, and just repeat the cycle because your strand weapon is responsible for that. Not only that, you've got fragments in your kit that also sever targets when you lay into them with a strand
Mhm.
weapon. So I think there's a lot of synergy there, especially with an aspect because you can also control the amount of slots you get with this sort of thing. So I think
I
instead of
agree.
making an exotic entirely, which on Bungie's end does require a lot of resources, I think they could better allocate those resources to something like an aspect.
Right. Okay.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a
Um
good. That's a really good.
now for the last hunter exotic, Bacchus changed to use a tier 4 non-stacking weapon damage bonus. And this is going to be brought up a few more times across this article because they did this to a lot of things like Path of Burning Steps, Mantle of Battle Harmony, Sacred Alchemy, where they made it so you can't link surge mods with these exotics to make them more powerful, but the trade-off is the exotic itself gives you a damage increase that's worth like 3 weapon surge mods. So it's an interesting trade-off where they're like, hey, you get a damage boost after you activate this ability, 25 for PvE, but 6% in PvP. It no longer stacks with surge mods, but provides a larger bonus to achieve. So I'm I think for Path of Burning Steps and Sacred Alchemy and Mask of Backers, it makes sense. But I'm gonna jump to, but when we get down to Warlock, there's one thing that I want to talk about. But in terms of
Oh
Backers,
no.
I think this is cool. I think this is all right. Like Backers wasn't really doing nothing other than giving you a big dodge. So like, all right, cool, whatever.
I
Like,
thought it's fair. I think
yeah,
it's fair, personally. I have no grievances with it at all.
yeah. All right, now for Titans, we cooking,
Oh.
we cooking. Because
Oh.
after all the bitching I did last week, Bungie was like, "Hey yo, we feel you, so we're gonna give
Oh,
you a
he's
look.
so
So
happy.
we gonna actually give you some
Gonna
stuff to
pass
work
y'all
with."
a little W for the time being.
He's so
For
happy.
once we get a W, and I'm very excited about this. So, point contact cannon brace. Bungie finally said, "Hey, yo, we heard you when we released a crap exotic, so we're gonna actually fix the crap exotic." So, lightning strikes from the point contact cannon brace now jolt targets, increase PVE damage per lightning bolt from 50 to 200 and being amplified now increases the damage of the lightning strikes by 50% instead of extended range. So for those who don't know, what Thunderclap does is just a big boost if you fully charge it. It has one-shot potential in PvP. It does like a bunch of kills in PvE, or reverse that, PvP to PvE. And with point contact cannon brace, when you use a thunderclap, not only does it create a giant shockwave, it creates additional lightning strikes that are supposed to do additional damage to things around the different targets. But in true fashion, Bungie nerfed it into the ground the first week of Siege of the Plunder because it was kind of busted to where it could kill a Loreley Titan pre-nerf of Restoration 2. Like just with the exotic. So I felt, I understood why they did it, but there had to be a comfy medium. I think this is the comfy medium because now with this exotic, Titans have a reason to run Thunderclap in PvE for like GMs and stuff, because you can Thunderclap and stun an Overload champion. Because Jolt stuns Overloads. So you have that potential now. I think it's really freaking cool. I love this. I'm so hyped for this.
I think it's fantastic. It gives so much more value to that exotic, which, by the way, aesthetically is gorgeous.
It's so beautiful. I got the first day it came out, and then it was like, oh, it's disabled. I can't use it. Well, never mind. Like it just
right in the trash.
It was so weird. Now here's the back at it like a crack addict for your boy. My favorite exotic in the history of Destiny. No backup plans. But because here's the thing, prior to like in its current state, no backup plans is functional. It's very like mid-tier functional to where how it works is you expend your melee energy when you get a shotgun kill, and you get like a 50 point overshield, a void overshield for like a little bit of time. But then each shotgun kill gives you like, I think it's like 15 or 20% of your melee back. That way you can get to a point where you can then shotgun again and get an overshield. But then Bungie was like, hey, yo, we gonna rework that motherfucker. So, replacing the old functionality entirely, it now provides a moderate benefit to airborne effectiveness and reload speed of your shotguns. And then while you have a void overshield, shotguns deal additional damage, and shotgun final blows refresh your overshield. And then while you're using the void subclass, rapid shotgun final blows, or defeating a powerful enemy, which similar to like things like Unrelenting will probably mean a Guardian, you gain a void overshield and kicks off your health generation. So from what this reads, it probably doesn't matter about your strength or your melee anymore. It's not tied to your melee. So it works similar to what I amassed now, where you just get the benefit. And what I love about the wording is it don't matter where you get an overshield from, cowboy. You can just throw down a bastion barricade and roll up into a fight.
Yeah, it's absolutely filthy what they're doing.
I love
I'm
this.
afraid of where it's going to go with PvP, but I'm also excited because I'd like to see people jump into new ways to play. We're just hunters and warlocks. We're just gonna have to adapt. We have to figure
all I can say is y'all better roll your fusion rifles back out, because you're gonna see an uptick of just aping shotguns and rolling in deep. And like, if you aren't ready to counter that, that's on you. Like,
right.
This finally gives Void something to do besides run like Armamentarium for an extra grenade, or like a neutral game exotic like Synthoceps or Dune Marchers. Something that's specifically tied to the Void kit is getting a buff. Like that's what I get so annoyed by when it comes to PvP talk, is everyone's like, oh, when I amassed Doom Marchers, Synthoceps, and Peacekeepers are so busted, and Tails weren't so busted. Those are all neutral game exotics. What about the elemental exotics that Bungie has left in the dirt? Now we're seeing a rise in the potential of them. Like the next one, Second Chance, where the shield throw melee now weakens enemies and stunning the barrier champion with your shield throw now refunds a shield charge. Bravo.
Oh, that's so freaking
That
nice.
feels entirely natural to the exotic. I'm very happy.
I don't know why you didn't just get a refill of your melee charge from the jump with second chance. Because like not only has since second chance come out, they had to make it so one shield throw stuns a champion after like 2 seasons. Then they had to go. Now they're like, okay, cool. Now you get a shield charge back from stunning a champion. Why wouldn't you just make those the kit from jump? Like we don't even need the weekend part of it. That should have just been the base level of the arm from jump. Because to this day, there's no reason to run this exotic instead of Ursa Furiosa. Now this actually has potential to run other than Ursa Furiosa because it offers another champion thing, and you can run it like a grenade launcher or something else. So I love this. So good. Bravo. Stronghold, no one really cares, but like.
Oh my god.
I mean, like I'm gonna keep it a buck because like who's using a sword in anything right now? Let's keep it like other than eager edging. Like who's gonna use stronghold even with this change? Like there's like 5 people who use it because what they're doing now is when you stop blocking, you gain restoration too for a short duration, which it has a longer duration for every shot you blocked. So like if you're just the craziest person running a sword build for your Titan, bravo. But I don't know.
I feel like
I know some people who do.
People are willing to give it credit for it.
I mean, like I think if you just have someone who's just vehemently against running Thunder Crash and Atrax, you can be like, hey, yo, put the Stronghold on and run Lament. Like that's all I can really see from this. Is just like Lament builds have a way to regen health. Like if you're doing the first encounter in Duality with the dude from freaking Chronosaro.
Gowron.
My boy Gowron.
Yeah, you can have like people who fight Gowron have a health regen now. Other than that, I don't really see about like even with this Stronghold is not going to be top
Lament,
tier.
they already have a health regen anyways because all you got to do is shield with Lament and you get your health back.
Right. So like I don't see the utility of this even with the change. I'm like, that's cool for sword people.
Something that you should probably look out for though. In particular, sometimes or in a lot of different cases with exotics, when they include verbs like restoration, they don't always apply to just when you're using that subclass. I'll give you an example here. Rain of Fire. I can use Rain of Fire on any subclass. It doesn't apply Radiant only to Solar. So if I'm using Stasis and I get a fusion rifle kill, I still get Radiance. So I think there is value in Stronghold in that regard, assuming it takes that same route. So that way, if you're using something like Strand and you're in a duel and you've got your Stronghold and you have a sword, you could pull the sword out to use it as a way to gain health. You could bait shots. So that way you go into fire, take those shots, move out of fire, put your shield down and get your health back. So there's play potential to kind of get the opponent to push you, to get frustrated with what they're doing with you, or to even feel confident enough to do that. Because with the sort of sword that you might be using, that might have a lot of potential to it.
That's true. Okay.
I'm honestly thinking it's got a lot of potential. Honestly.
I don't know.
The first thing that just popped into my head is a fucking Heart Shadow.
Yeah.
That might be some of the reason Heart Shadow, because no one runs Heart Shadow right now.
No one runs Heart Shadow.
Okay. We'll have to wait and see. Now for the big one. Bungie finally gave me the thing that I've been saying since prior to Season of the Plunder. They finally did the thing that I have been begging on this podcast for them to do. They finally buffed. They finally reworked Eternal Warrior. Praise the gods, bro. Like I straight up said, "Hey yo, why didn't when Arc 3.0 come out, y'all didn't buff Eternal Warrior?" They're like, no one said anything. Like you reworked Loreley, you reworked Phoenix Cradle. Like, why didn't you do something with this? No response. I'm like, bruh. But now, so Eternal Warrior, rapid takedowns with an arc weapon grant escalating bonus to your arc weapon damage using the same non-stacking damage bonuses used by Surge bots. This can go all the way up to tier 4 damage bonus, granting a damage bonus of 25% in PvE or 6% PvP, providing a larger bonus that can be achieved with 3 Surge mods equipped. While at tier 4 damage bonus, arc kills refresh the bonus's duration. After you use Fists of Havoc, you gain the tier 4 bonus damage. So, Aikilos SMG Titans rejoice because Volt Shot is about to go hard. That's all I'm about to say.
I agree there.
Right.
They
Like-
somehow made this exotic one of the more top tier choices going into PvE for next season. I don't know how it's going to perform in PvP, but it's definitely going to be a top shelf option for PvE.
There might be a reason to run Eternal Warrior in a GM now, because like not only with last week's reports about the reworking Fists of Havoc to provide blind, you might have a reason to be able to blind over like champions and stun them. So this might be a really cool thing where you're jolting targets with like your SMG or your sidearm, and then pulling up and doing bonus damage to things. This could be a really cool kit. I'm really excited for the first time ever to run Eternal Warrior. Now that fashion is gonna be whack, but I don't care.
Right?
Now,
I'm
it's coming with an ornament.
ornament. It's one of the only. Well, not one of the only.
It's got
but
one
of the
ornament, but the
few
ornament
that
has
you
is
can-
hideous.
Yeah.
Okay. Its base
just a
look
whole
is disgusting, and the ornament just even worse.
Just changes color and makes it look like weird as hell.
Yeah.
Kefri's horn, an exotic that looks hideous from jump, but actually gets a pretty good ornament. Now, solar damage wave scorches targets. Now, here's the thing: if you use Kefri's horn with strand suspend, it's kind of dirty. So, if this scorches enough that it causes an ignition, this might actually give people a reason to run Strand Kefri's horn builds.
Right.
I don't know how powerful it'll be, but we'll see.
This exotic is going to live or die on that verb specifically.
Yep, exactly.
Call it now. I feel like it's going to apply at least somewhere close to around 60 stacks.
If it doesn't do what it did when energy accelerant is a thing, where it had the potential to like one-shot somebody, no one's gonna run it in PvP. I'll tell you that right now. Like no one's gonna run Kefri's horn in PvP, and it's not gonna be worth any time. Now, granted, if you combine it with Strand and you can pop the barricade, suspend someone, cause them to be like low health, that might have some utility. But the lesser tracking from only having one of the lashes and not having the ambient leap, that's going to play a big factor. So we'll see how that goes. Any thoughts on Kefri's horn other than how ugly it is?
Nah.
All right, cool. Path of the Burning Steps is facing the same fate as Eternal Warrior and Vesper and Bacchus, where they're changing it. Overall, with this change, with like the 6% and removing the weapon surge, I think this is a big misstep. Because Bungie's taking away the potential, especially for PvE, where like these exotics started to see some utility. You saw people making Path of Burning Steps build. You saw people making freaking Mantle of Battle Harmony builds. We're gonna get to that in a second. Like saw builds actually taking shape. These like lesser used exotics. Now they're like putting them all on a benchmark similar to what they did with like freaking Ursa Furiosa and Shards of Galanor and the Archer Pants, where they're all on the same like only get half your super thing. It's like why are you putting all these damage exotics in the same category? It feels really weird, especially with the Warlock one, which we'll get to.
Yeah, I agree. It seems sort of odd when they uniform all these exotics when they don't perform the same way.
It feels real weird.
If I'm being honest, I honestly think this is the right way to go. I think this is a pretty solid change. And the reason why I say that is like it gives more room for more build crafting. Right?
Okay.
So when you think about a lot of like builds here lately, a lot of people have just been running like triple weapon surge on their legs, but using these exotics takes away the need to even run that and allows players to put on stuff like invigoration or innervation and all other kinds of stuff to help out with building up your abilities, building up your keeping yourself alive.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff.
Put a
So
pin
it's
in
going to
that.
give a lot more
Put a
room.
pin in that because I feel like once we get to Battle Harmony, you'll change your tune on that. Dune Marchers. I will be the one to say it. This needed to happen. As a Titan main, I will admit this needed to happen. They're making it so they're reducing the range of the chain damage from 20 meters to 12 meters. I would have preferred 15 meters, but I'll go with 12. And they're
7.
and they're well, and then we're making it, and then they're making it so that the PvP damage goes from 85 to 50. And they said the dev commentary, the main thing over now here. Let me before I read the dev commentary, I'll say this. I will agree with the first part of the dev commentary and what the large part of the community has said, where there's no reason why Doom Marchers should kill you through a wall just because your teammate's peeking. There's no reason for that. I will be the first one to admit it. Doom Marchers, that was the one thing that made it a little too strong, was the fact that the reach of it could hit you through walls. That was the one thing. I will be 100% honest with it. Now, here's where Bungie messed up. They said in the dev commentary, this exotic sees a lot of use in PvP and not much in PvP. A lot of use in PvP, but not a lot of use in PvE. And these changes embrace that. What do you mean, Bungie? Do you mean
it was a little weird. I didn't quite get what they meant by that.
Do you mean lessening the damage and lessening the chain is going to make it beneficial in PvE? Because that doesn't make any sense. That's the one beef I have with it, where I'm willing to relent and say Doom Marchers needed a little bit of a nerf, but your language don't make no sense. So I'll leave it there. Where I feel like this is a little bit too much of a nerf, but I would have been comfortable with 15 meters and I'll say 50 damage is okay. 85 was a little high. You could put it 60, but I'll take 50. So we're at a comfy place now. You might see a little bit of drop in Doom Marcher uses, but it'll still be decent.
Yeah.
Warlocks. Vesper of Radius does the same thing as everything else. In terms no, it doesn't. I'm thinking about Sacred Alchemy. Now with Vesper of Radius, your rifts emit an arc shockwave every 5 seconds that deals 200 damage in PvE and 70 damage in PvP. And enemies defeated by the shockwave explode for an additional 100 damage. And you have if you have an arc subclass equipped, it blinds nearby enemies. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Now I feel I'm gonna let the Warlocks talk.
That might tempt me to actually run an arc build. I don't mind arc if I have to, but I normally don't run arc. I am a Sunbracers, Nades for Days main. I will run well if need be. But normally I'm a Dawnblade, and now with Strand, I'm I am mom. I summon all the babies. I have an infinite baby build that I absolutely love. But with those changes, that actually might tempt me to lean into at least trying an arc build, because I never really found much interest in it unless I absolutely was forced to. If, I was running a freaking strike for pinnacles or something like that,
Mm-hmm. Now, here's my approach to this exotic, because there are two ways I know it can be used. And first being stasis. Absolutely 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Not even for just the freeze rift, because I'm going to get into that in a second, but for the option to set traps in certain combat situations, where I've noticed as a warlock, a lot of classes feel encouraged to push during certain moments of combat. Let's say you're popping off a couple of shots and you're ducking back in and you're ready to pop your rift. I've found that obviously there are instances where you can freeze someone as they push, but this also gives you a little extra utility in that space as well, where if you want to do it early, just throw your rift down, enter a duel, and then when things start to get a little tough, you can exit your rift and pull back without the worry of them pushing past it. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
You can also combo that with a dusk field grenade. So if they're in that space, they move through the dusk field, they're also getting shocked from the rift itself, which will support the duel. Now, here's the second thing that a lot of people I don't think thought about was that when you pop a Well of Radiance, you can also throw your rift inside that as well. So that people push into your Well of Radiance, you're getting an overshield from the well. I'm sorry, you're getting an overshield from the rift. You're getting your health back from the well. And then you're also getting the Vesper shocks, which can keep them out of your space and protect you. So there are applicable ways to use this. So I'm excited. I'm going to go all across the spectrum to find out what I can use this exotic for to maximize its potential.
That's going to be nutty. Dawn, Chromatic Fire. I feel like Chromatic Fire is about to be meta as hell because they're increasing the radius and the damage of the explosion created by precision kinetic takedowns, and the explosion also applies a status effect that to targets damaged by it, and depending on what subclass you're equipped with, the explosion does different things. So it blinds on arc, it scorches on solar, it slows on stasis, it severs on strand, and it weakens on void. So literally, if you have like a hung jury and you have and you're just pecking at someone and getting kills with hung jury precision kills, you're literally just making explosions of different colors and going nuts. So that's gonna be really interesting. I'm excited to see. So combine that with explosive payload on old hung juries, or kinetic tremors on new hung juries, and that could just be bonkers.
I've already got my box breathing build set up and ready to go.
This is gonna be real interesting. So I'm excited to see what happens there. Dawn Chorus. Daybreak projectiles damage bonus has been increased and no longer is reliant on the enemy being scorched. So Dawn Chorus is about to go hard in the paint.
Yes.
Gives you a reason to run Daybreak again instead of running well all the time.
Yep.
This might be a controversial take. Might be a little bit of a hot take, and I think it's appropriate for the exotic. I think Dawn Chorus is about to power creep.
Okay. Speak on it.
Yes, speak.
I think they've done so much for Dawn Chorus to elevate it that they are not anticipating what players are going to do with it.
Good point.
Yeah, okay. I feel you. Sanguine Alchemy falls in the same category as the rest of them, but instead of because when standing in a rift, it grants a non-stacking bonus to weapon damage, matching your subclass damage type. And this damage bonus is equivalent to 2 Surge leg mods, so 17% PvE and 4.5% in PvP. That kind of gives Sanguine Alchemy some more utility. I don't think it's going to be OP or anything like that, but that's kind of cool. That's all right. Okay.
I don't think it's enough, personally. I understand the direction they're trying to take it, but I don't think I'm going to put on Sanguine Alchemy just yet. I think I'm going to have to experiment a little bit with it to understand what they want me to do. But I've been more inclined to, lean on some of the prior philosophies they have with Sanguine, like the one where you can see through walls. I know that's not exactly where we're at now with things. We want, balance to be kind of more on the forefront. But I do like the idea of maybe Sanguine Alchemy having different interactions with different subclasses. Maybe if you're running Void, you get True Sight for a few seconds when you're in your rift. Or maybe if you're, running Stasis, that if you're using a Stasis weapon, it'll slow enemies for a few seconds when you shoot them. Just something a little bit more unique. I don't really think this direction they're going with Sanguine is very unique. Because again, the exotic is kind of the idea of trade-off. It's if we were to take it to something more grounded on what we've seen in other things, the idea of Sanguine Alchemy is to give something up in order for you to gain power in other areas. So it doesn't really feel like I'm giving up something. It just feels like I'm sitting in a rift and gaining power and just killing enemies and just performing some odd cycle, which doesn't really feel, specific. It doesn't feel unique.
Right. So we'll see how that goes. Tower, any thoughts on Sanguine Alchemy?
I really can't speak on it because I don't use it.
Okay, fair enough. Claws of Ahamkara. Power melee kills create orbs of power, aka the heavy-handed claws. because they even say when
Heavy-handed.
heavy-handed mods are equipped, it increases the potency. And the death commentary is it literally does the same thing as heavy-handed. So stacking it like it really doesn't do too much other than make the orb of power more potent. So now here's what I meant with Mantle of Battle Harmony. The thing that's always been a thing with Mantle of Battle Harmony specifically. Let me read the original version of it real quick, because Mantle of Battle Harmony
has been my favorite Warlock exotic since it came out.
Because it says takedowns with weapons that have the same damage type matching your subclass element grant you super energy. While your super energy is full, you instead gain a temporary bonus to weapon damage of the type matching your subclass element. In terms of the math from what Light GG says from community research, if the super is not full, it does about 1.45 it does damage. When the super is full, you get to about 15% damage increase. Now, with the change, they're making it so when your super is full, you get 15% damage bonus. You get a 6% damage bonus and a 25% damage bonus in PvE. So you get cut in almost half from over half. You get cut over in half from the damage you have with Mantle Battle Harmony. And it's only when your super is fully charged, not like with Eternal Warrior or Path of Burning Steps, where it's off of kills. It's literally when your super is full. Like this is like a lesser freaking what's the Titan chest piece that I never wear that everyone loves for some reason that I can't stand. No, the solar one. The solar one.
Heart.
Hellfire Heart.
Yeah. Hellfire Heart. Yeah. I was thinking Heart of Inmost Light,
this is barely this is not even a Hellfire Heart. This is like lesser than everything. And it takes away the purpose of even using Mantle of Battle Harmony. Like it wasn't even meta or anything. It's just non-existent now.
Yeah.
For me, it was definitely just an unnecessary change. They could have left the exotic alone, and that would have been a buff enough for me.
Yeah, it feels really out of pocket just to target Mantle of Battle Harmony to put it on the same level as everything else. That's why I wanted you to put a pin on your thought, David, because I don't know how I feel about this.
So
here's my
the
thing.
way I'm thinking about this, and I might have just listened wrong, but don't tier 4 damage buff stack with well?
I don't think it does.
No.
Which
I'm almost sure they do.
Tier 4 weapon damage is stacked with well?
No.
Yeah, that's what
it doesn't.
I'm almost sure they do.
Okay.
Because your surge mod stack with well. So
that's true. They do stack.
Yeah.
So this buff you get 25% plus a well. This will allow warlocks to be able to effectively
do
damage, but also it pushes warlocks that want to run like double well in a raid to split off their wells and not drop them both at the same exact fucking time, like dumbasses for some reason. I don't know why people do that. It's like, okay, well, we had to, but now we got one.
Sometimes it's a panic super. We can't fault people for panic supering.
But also, like, the build crafting that is going to give warlocks is going to be ridiculous. Because you're going to be having, like, I can see Vex builds, fucking, what's the name of the goddamn SMG, Callus mini tool builds that are just going to, you're going to get your super back so fast that having that damage buff is going to be, it reminds me of my favorite sidearm in the game, Traveler's Chosen. Like, you're going to hate, like, having the ability to get your ability back is such a great perk, but just giving up that gathering light is just like, oh my god, I gotta build it back up. Man, I really don't want to give it up now.
Here's the thing, like, I want to use Battle Harmony, but I don't know if in that particular scenario I would choose Battle Harmony over something like Phoenix Protocol. Because Phoenix Protocol is, helping me snowball my super. and mods are coming in clutch to kind of help elevate the element of choice that I'm using to maximize that weapon, let's say Vex, for example, then it's not really, viable for me to say Mantle of Battle Harmony is a better choice. It might be a choice, but I don't think this was the route that they needed to go with this exotic. And on top of that, it also it's asking for too much for too little.
I agree.
Not only do you want me to hold
on,
but you're asking me to demand kills out of all these different things, and it feels like other exotics within that same
because
class.
you don't get the weapon damage buff until you get full super. It's like you don't get the ability regen off of Hallowfire Heart until you have full super. You're trading your super for the damage buff. That's what that like versus like new Eternal Warrior, where the minute you get a kill, you have a 6% damage buff in PvE. Versus with Mantle Battle Harmony, you have to not use your super to get a 6% damage buff in PvP. It's a weird system where they're taking away the solid 15%, dropping it to 6% for no reason. It just feels really out of pocket to target this just to align it with a bunch of other exotics. It feels really weird.
So, in my opinion, I think it's actually a really good buff when you think about the fact that how many whale warlocks sit on top of their whale until the perfect moment.
Yeah, that's true.
It's gonna give those players a reason to just sit on it until you get to that damage phase. It's really giving those players, like, it's giving them value out of not using their super.
Right.
And you gotta think, once you drop your whale, you're producing orbs, you're gonna be picking up orbs, people are gonna be dropping supers. Like, you're gonna get your super back so fast, you'll probably have your super back before the damage phase is even over.
Right.
So
that is very true.
I'll meet you halfway because you're right there. There is some value in that sense, but I'd be happier if they leveled out the damage profile across the whole exotic. Like for example, if by holding your super, it increases the damage output by 10% of your melee or your grenades, and your weapons keep that damage benefit the entire time. If holding your super without requiring any sort of circumstance after that, I think that would make the exotic better. So if I'm just holding super, I gain more weapon damage. My abilities hit a little bit harder, and that's the incentive. The incentive is to get up to that point by making those kills. So you get a little bit of extra super energy before you get to that, and then you can kind of just enjoy the exotic for what it's doing to your neutral game.
Yeah, so it'll be.
This is why the Mantle of Battle Harmony has been my favorite, like, warlock exotic up until the Rain of Fire.
Yeah.
Or as I like to call it, the Hunter Pants. Because I feel personally slighted because I'm like, how dare Bungie give warlocks my fucking Dragon Shadow for free?
Oh no.
That's funny. That's very funny. Moving on from there, we have the Prometheum Spur, like the pants that have seen nothing in years. Now, when it grants Rift energy on any solar weapon takedown, and the more energy granted from the solar weapon takedown while standing in a Rift, so you literally just get to like basically have a Rift machine with Prometheum Spur now. Also, now have to be standing in a Rift when you get a final blow for the exotic to consume your class ability energy and create a rift at the target's location. So it's a trade-off where you get to get tons of rift energy, but then expend it at that cost. So I like what they're doing here. They're making you fight for the benefit of constant rifts. I like that. That's kind of cool.
I like that too. I think it's a better change than where it was before. That's for sure.
Now,
it makes us think about what we need to like what are we sacrificing? We have to really think about that, and sometimes like that's what you have to do. You have to figure out, okay, what am I going to be sacrificing in order to get this buff?
Exactly. Now for the 1-2 punch, I like to call it, because I went to Prometheum Spur before I went to this. The right hook is gonna be the Ophidian aspect, where they finally said, "Hey, yo, y'all don't get to be Synthoset Titans no more. You lose you lose your extended melee range." And R.I.P. to your affiliates, homies, because like I will be the first one to admit you getting extended melee range plus all the extra benefits like stability and reload speed and whatnot. That
And
was
handling.
and handling. That was
And airborne
over.
effectiveness.
And airborne effectiveness.
And
That was
airborne
overkill. That
Yeah.
was overkill.
Yeah.
Like,
I
it was either
will say-
one or the other. You can be Titans or you can be Shooties. That's all you get. That's all you
Right,
get.
but it felt weird anyway for it to even have the extended melee because coming out of D1, it never had that. So when it was reintroduced into Destiny 2, that was just kind of tacked on there, and I never really quite understood the design goal. Like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, to me, the Ophidians have always felt like the exotic that would just help you in the gunfight. Like, it helps you move between one moment to another, and that's basically it. And I feel like, taking away the extended melee is not a huge issue. I feel like everything else about the exotic is still fantastic. It is
Right.
definitely 100% still an exotic choice, but this
Exactly.
just helps level it.
Now for that that right hook. We already got the left. We're gonna get that right. So Starfire Protocol.
Oh,
It's time to go to bed, homies. It's time to go to bed because they reduced.
nerfed her into the ground, and I don't even use Starfire, and it just makes me so freaking sad.
So they reduced the amount of
It
energy
did.
gained per instance of damage from 20% to 2.5. And empowered weapon kills now grant 20% grenade energy. Now, here's where I will meet you in the middle. This thing needed to be nerfed because I said it before on our Rod episode. This exotic is the only reason why top teams can beat the raid in like 6 hours. That's the only reason. I will forever say it. That's the only reason why people will crash through planets and crash through Desi was this dang exotic. And anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to you. Now, where I will meet
And
you
let
in
me
the
clarify something about that stupid exotic.
go for it.
The fact, and you and I were talking about this the other night when we were gaming. The whole thing about Starfire is that it's one buff goes to everybody. Okay, you don't need 6 well locks all running Starfire. All you need is one well lock and Starfire. And everybody gets that buff. But nobody understands that that's how it works, is that you just need the one. It doesn't stack.
Exactly.
Why do people do that?
Now here's where I'll meet people in the middle. 20% to 2.5 was rough. That's a lot. Like that means you put that thing in the ground.
Yes, that's what I said. They did it into the ground, man.
Yeah, but here's my thing though. I think it's only rough to single fire weapons. I think automatic weapons, especially 600s or 720s, I could see where the damage in a single clip would net you somewhere close to like half of your grenade ability back, which I think is what they're trying to go for. I don't think they wanted players to just sit back with just single fire heavy weapons like Xenophage, for example, that would just get them back all of their stuff.
Or like Witherhoard, just chucking a Witherhoard shot gave you.
Yeah, or a Witherhoard, exactly. Yeah.
So like I feel like this was a lot, but we'll see how it goes. Like all I'm saying is you're not going to see no one running this in the reprise raid. That's all I'm saying. Like this thing's going to hit the ground for a little bit. Yeah. But this also goes.
I got 2 words for you though.
Go for it.
Suspend build.
Suspend build, yes.
Suspend build,
but like here's my thing though. This goes back to what I've said before though. Bungie does like there's rare cases like Eternal Warrior where they find a comfy middle ground, or like certain exotics they find a comfy middle ground. But then there's cases like this where they just dig it into the grave. Like they don't understand finding a middle ground or buffing other exotics up to level with it because power creep is a thing. Like they're gonna or up. There's no in between with Bungie here. It's frustrating.
They're gonna fix it. They will absolutely fix it. There is no way that they won't, to be honest. Like with how low that is, like a good middle ground would have been like 10%. You know, obviously that's half a 20, but like even if they buff it back up to like 5%, a good friend of mine, Ponk, he's in our Discord. He literally does this for fun. He runs the numbers on everything in this game. And he ran the numbers and said a perfect, a perfect middle ground numbers wise would be for Bungie to take it back up to 5% once they realize how bad it is.
So
now, granted,
granted,
it did still say that if you have an empowered rift while in your well, then you bump back up to 20%. But like I don't know a lot of people who run empowered rifts in PvE content. And 2, most people aren't thinking to run or to put down a well or a rift anyways inside of a well, because then they don't have a rift to run when their well goes out. And if they're the only warlock, then everybody's gonna die without like a healing well.
Right. So we'll see what happens with that.
Well,
This is,
like
if anything,
to
this
add to
hurts
that
solo
though,
players more than team players.
I
think this
wouldn't say
change was
that.
deliberately directed towards solo play. I don't think team-oriented
probably.
combat is going to feel too much.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
On time, yeah.
I feel like you're not going to be seeing like what we saw, where someone solo flawless Rod with this exotic.
Oh no,
Yeah,
we're not seeing that
I
no
agree.
more. Now,
that in conjunction with the delay between switching loadouts, ain't nobody soloing that man again.
Right now, honestly, TWAB was super small. The biggest thing that we could take away from the TWAB was there was a Season of the Deep trailer, trailer teaser. Looks like we're going into Rapture on BioShock. They showed us what next season's ritual weapon's going to be. It's going to be a Tex Mechanica kinetic weapon that like just a kinetic long arm, which will be kind of cool. I'm excited to see what that does. The perk pool better be good, or I'm fighting. Anyway, now here's the thing that we're not going to worry about the swab. Swab was small. Let's talk about Tuesday's patch as the closing topic of the evening. So everybody and their mama came out in droves because Bungie decided that with the Tuesday patch, they were going to fix an issue, 2 different issues. Well, one issue specifically, because there was a thing where if you swapped from a pinpoint slug to Fourth Horseman, you were doing like tons of damage. Tons of damage.
Yeah.
So Bungie said, hey, yo, we're going to fix that. But along with that, we are going to make it so when you swap a weapon, there is a 2-second delay before you can fire your gun again. Now, the speed running and low man community came out in droves in trying to say Bungie was wrong for this. Bungie's ruining our fun, yada yada, etc., etc. And a lot of commentators came out and said casual players are like hardly going to notice this. Now, granted, there was somebody who said, "Hey, yo, if you pop golden gun, that's affected by it too because it's coded like a gun." That's kind of scary. But Bungie even came out and said, "Hey, to give you some more insight, there was networking issues across players and environments that made us implement this. It wasn't just the shotgun issue. So, but at the same time, we're gonna drop it from 2 seconds to 1 second when Season of the Deep comes out." Now, this arose a conversation between the low man slash speedrunning community and the casual community, where the speedrunning and low man community of Destiny 2 were very hurt by this and didn't understand what was going on because this hurt their ideas. Because not only did you see people like hot swapping entire builds with the new build with the loadout saving system to do different like low bans and speed runs, but you saw like even just swapping from tractor cannon to a heavy weapon, there was the delays now, and people were upset about this because they were doing solo runs and low bans of raids and stuff like that, or speed runs. And I don't like like quoting people a lot when it comes to things. But Glad put out a video about this where he was very harsh, I would say, when it came to the community, where he spoke on that the casual community would very much be like, good, play the game the way it was supposed to be played, yada yada, etc., and like attack them and like say they're horrible people and stuff like that. But Glad in turn called people like gremlins and was throwing punches back at them rather than having a conversation. And this is what I mean a lot with the community, where we don't know how to have discussions between the top tier community and the casual community. We need to be able to have conversations rather than spitting venom at each other. Now, I've been the first one at the gate, like, because I've had controversy on TikTok where there was a YouTuber that was showing people how to low man crypt security with glitches. I have said it over and over and over again. I respect low mans, I respect speed runs, but the minute you go out of the map, you lose my respect, because you are breaking an active online game for your speed run. Like, there's people who like speed run SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom and like old games, and like I saw people speed run Jedi Fallen Order and stuff like that. Those are offline single player games, and hell, even people like Arcane Studios love when you break things like Dishonored and stuff like that. That's fine. But when you are in an active online game doing that, that's a whole other ballgame. Now, when it comes to just speed running and low man, I saw someone do a duo deep or a trio deep stone, and it was so cool to watch. There was no glitches. They were just doing it. It was super cool to watch. I love that. You show your potential.
I have so much more respect for speedrunners who actually contribute to the speed element of it, and not really looking to find ways to circumvent mechanics. Like, if you go into it and you're just optimal with everything that you do, hats off to you. You have nothing but my respect. But when it comes to, breaking what the game's design was intended to do and finding loopholes and systems or glitches or out of bound reaches, I feel like that is its own category, and I respect it too. But it doesn't share the same trophy for me.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, here's the thing that no one wants to hear, that like I think is coming next based off this hot swap thing. You know for a fact that Bungie probably doesn't like the fact that y'all be well skating and shatter skating, right?
Yeah. They've already had the conversation about that.
No one's ever told you like no one ever like intended like Well and Eager Edge to work like that, or Shatter Dive and Eager Edge do that like that. Like, it's very obvious that sooner or later Bungie's just gonna go snap, and y'all are gonna lose that so fast, and there is gonna be the biggest uprising in the history of the Destiny 2 community. Because let's be real, more than likely when it comes to how Eager Edge works, Bungie just couldn't figure out how to make it activate only when you were around enemies, like Surrounded does. So they made it like universal. Sooner or later, they're gonna figure it out, and you're gonna lose everything, and you're gonna be pissed. So I think you need to prepare yourself now for the potential for that to happen, and then you're gonna learn how to do more optimal speed runs, more optimal things. Like, I know when people were pissed when Worldline Zero got nerfed, and I'm like, that was kind of understandable, because Worldline Zero's entire purpose was to go fast. Like, that was the point of the exotic, that it wasn't just like targeting a specific ad. But like with this specifically, I don't think Bungie meant it to do that. So y'all need to prepare yourselves. But in general, casual community, I'm gonna throw shade at casuals. There's no reason to throw shade at people for kicking butt in the game. That, like, they don't get too many trophies, too many like big rewards for soloing content. I watched somebody on Strand Titan solo Glassway today, and I was like on a GM, and I learned so much that I'm gonna take into GMs tonight, that I was blown away. Like, they did it legit. They did no glitches. They didn't even use the Osteo Stricker glitch that's going on right now. They did it legit, and I was like so blown away by that. So very much, sometimes y'all just need to give people their flowers. You need to be respectful and be about that.
wholeheartedly agree that.
Yes. Tip the hat and be so freaking respectful for that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not everyone
I'm
is
gonna give you a little pushback.
Here.
I'm
That's
gonna give you a little bit of pushback.
Okay, speak
Right.
on it.
Okay.
So the thing about it is, and this is just a overarching issue I see here in Destiny 2, right? Where it's a zero-sum game when it comes down to the balancing and like who gets to have fun in the game, right? Like when Ron came out on the day one, you had all the like content creators, all the top tier players coming out and saying, "Oh my God, this is bullshit. How dare this not be like this grueling experience, right? At the expense of the casual player, right? Casual players who for the first time, a lot of them for the first time got their first day one clear, and it was kind of a slap in the face because they're like, look, I don't have my job. I play this game for fun. And I only get one chance a year to go for it, right? Just like content creators like Dado only get 1 year to go for it. But he's complaining about completing in the top 100, or outside of the top 100. Whereas you have players like myself, Alchemy, who are getting probably their first, maybe their second clear, and we're like just happy to get the clear, and it just comes off as like arrogant. Like, okay, like you don't have this like exploit that you can use to shave 10 seconds off a boss fight or shave 20 minutes off an encounter, off a raid. Like, yeah, you don't have that, and it sucks sometimes to have the game balanced for the middle of the pack. But it has to be a conversation of balanced for people, for the average player to have fun, but for top tier players to enjoy themselves.
So here's where I'm gonna defer to you, and you know how much I hated how some of us couldn't get through the day one raid. There, like, but then, like, I used the example of the one guy that came into our LFG that day with not the correct, like he refused to put on Thunderlord. He wanted to run like commemoration or some shit. He refused to change his stats. He kept dying and blaming the AdClear team, like that guy. There's a fine line, and I'm gonna give Dado credit for this. There is a fine line between people who bust their ass to complete content and certain things than people who it got to a point on the day one of Ron where people were just carrying people to their first day one raid. Or there was a team that flawlessly in contest mode. That is absurd. The point of a day one raid race, or even just the contest mode in general, is to be where you have your best team, your best loadout, your best everything. And I'll be the one to say it, like partially because of Starfire Protocol, there should have been no reason why that raid was cleared in 6 hours. There should have been no reason. Like, we need to go back to where like Deepstone Crypt and Last Wish, where people were in there for like 18 hours. Where you need to like figure out how to get that damage threshold and figure out how to get through this. Like, the idea that we had the most granted people who did it, by all means, you got your first day one clear. Congratulations. I didn't even get it. I got to a point where I was so frustrated where I handed in the towel. But the people who got it, you worked your butt off for it, unless you were carried. Well, that's a whole other argument. But in terms of what happened, they're like, this should be the highest above grandmaster level content. If you put the work in, if you like do that, that should be your reward. I can't even tell you how many times when King's Fall was going to come back, where contest mode was going to be a thing. I kept telling people, prepare yourself mentally. Prepare yourself to get one shot. Prepare yourself for what's going to happen. And people wouldn't listen to me. They're like, we're going to go get our first day clear. And they got their butts kicked. And they didn't listen. and it was so like obvious. Like that's what Dado was saying in his video about the entire controversy, where the day one raid race or the day one contest one experience should be for that upper people who get that work, who put that work in. If you can complete a Grandmaster, you should be able to go do a day one raid. But if there were some people who had never raided before in their life trying to do that shit, nah, homie, you need to put the work in. Like, I'm not saying get good. I'm saying put the work in to reach that upper echelon. Like, I'm not saying like because to this day, I still give people credit who can only do a master nightfall. Cool. Once you get to your point and you can do a GM, good for you. But the buzzard is still going to be just as good as the buzzard adept, other than it can get the adept mod. It's fine. So like that's what I mean. Like I will be the first one to say there's a fine line between the way the upper tier people treat casuals and the way casuals treat upper tiers. We need to meet in the middle and start having more conversations, because otherwise it's going to be constantly just venom back and forth, and there can't be like a place where top tier players can test their mettle, because they're running out of content to do. They're inventing stuff like low man raids and stuff like that. Bungie never intended someone into solo flawless a raid by themselves. Are you kidding me? Like they're bored. They're trying to find something to entertain themselves because they love Destiny and they have nothing else to do. They're trying to do the unthinkable because Bungie hasn't given them more challenge. Meanwhile, there's some people who have never even done a raid before. Like, there's a stark contrast in certain parts of the community, and we need to start meeting in the middle. And that's where I'm going to leave my closing statement.
I don't know. The way I think about this, and I'm going to say it and we can go ahead and do the damn thing.
Yeah.
But the way I look at it is there is a difference between having to earn your stripes and earn your medal, to test your medal in some of these raids. I think the biggest change that Bungie has implemented is the power delta. The thing that has always made raids hard, that gave these like crazy clear rates back in the day, was power level. It was everything you did leading up to raid day that made the difference. It wasn't how you performed on raid day. It was what you did. Like, did you power level? Did you not sleep for 2 weeks? Like a certain somebody who will not,
we ain't gonna talk about
like everything you do.
The last time I had that sort of raid experience was like back during Shadowkeep when Garden of Salvation came out. Was when people were really, really itching to power grind, and those numbers made a massive difference in your outcome.
Right, I'll even admit when Beyond Light came out, like we were in a totally different power delta where there was like 200 levels you had to grind. There was like the sunsetting had just happened, and you didn't know what you needed to run for that day one raid. So I kind of see what you're saying. I feel like if the power delta was set like Ron for everything, where it was less of an entry gap, I feel like that you're making a lot of sense.
You wouldn't see half of these like super low like clear rates. But also, like, another thing that I think about is how different is Ron from Vault of Glass? How different is Ron from King's Fall? Like, the mechanics of how we do raids are the same.
That's fair.
Like go here, step on plate, grab buff, shoot boss. Players know these mechanics down to a fine point.
Yeah,
if you're asking players that saying that, oh yeah, you have to earn your stripes before you can come in here and perform, like, if players know how to perform mechanics and stay alive and build craft and do all this other stuff, like, if the only difference between success and failure is how much time you put into the game before the event. That is a failure of the event itself,
That's fair.
not the
Well,
player.
I will say what I was
Yeah,
more
that's a good
meaning
point.
by preparing. I meant more so by like what you said. Like there's still people that don't know how to build craft. There's still people like even before the new system came out, even with the new system, there's still people that don't understand stats. There's people that like even newer people to the clan. Like I'm not gonna name people. I would call them. I'm gonna look bad. Like newer
Call
people.
me out. I barely know how to build craft.
Okay,
Go
fine.
ahead. Call me out.
Tower is afraid that the government's going to hack her device on D2 Armor Picker. But
No, I'm not afraid. Don't
But, like,
don't lie on me like that. It's not that I'm afraid. It's that I used to work in military intelligence. Ergo, I know how freaking computer programs work
OPSEC
with
is
regards to
most
security.
definitely
Thank you.
right.
always a thing.
I was saying it for dramatics, but like there's people that legit. There's still people who don't even read the TWAB. There's people who have never raided before. There's people who don't even know like how to map. There's people who have never even seen don't know what ascendant shards do. They just collect them in the battle pass and don't know what an ascendant shard does. Like I had to teach somebody how to level up their armor recently. Like there's such
I had to teach my son.
There's such an information gap in the community because Bungie doesn't teach people how to do things. So like people have to make YouTube videos and stuff like that to teach people stuff. Like,
but that's also another thing that I want to touch on.
That's a fault of the system.
Investment that you have to make to be proficient in this game. Like you have to follow the content creators to kind of keep up with all the build crafting and like the goings on, the Twitters, and all this outside information that affects the inside of the game that never gets talked about on the inside of the game.
Yeah.
Like there is no patch note that pops up when you download an update. It's like, nope, you got to go to the app on your phone that not every player has, not every player knows about.
Now, see, that was the point that I was making earlier with the bulletin feature, where if they put something like that in the game, it would help. So that way people don't get so lost in terms of what's happening and what's going on. That's one step in the right direction, but there are many other areas that could benefit.
Another thing that I think we should do is have more teachers, like legitimate players that are willing to really help these new lights out. I see all too often where I've been like a solo raider for years, so I didn't see the down and the dirty when it comes down to like LFG rating in this game, and I dare any one of these content creators to go into a day one raid and LFG.
That's the other
whole
thing too.
entire
Yeah,
raid
no,
by
like
themselves.
if it's LFG, it's gonna be a nightmare. That's the other
It's
component
a fucking
too.
nightmare. But you also got to think like you fight against the LFG and other players more than you fight against the fucking enemies in the content. Like
you're right.
Yeah,
that's how it is. But people don't really like think about that. And to their point, like if you have a team, like you should, like the content dictates, it shouldn't be a problem. But same time, different token, like we have to start having a conversation about helping new players and not just, for lack of a better word, shitting on them for your own self-aggrandizement. Like
to piggyback off of that,
go right on ahead.
That's kind of why I made a post on Twitter not too long ago that was actually related specifically to that. It did a comparison between people who ask players to know what to do when they join versus someone saying that, I'm willing to teach. And it sparked a lot of rage, especially at the time. But it also kind of got the conversation rolling on the differences between how you're helping the community and how you're helping yourself. Not every player that joins the game should have to feel like they need to help someone. But if you're good at something, that should be something you're willing to do. So if I'm good at running the Nightfalls, or if I'm good at performing the mechanics in Garden of Salvation, I should be able to take up lead and, help those who are in need. I'm not going to isolate people. And I think that's really the main problem here is that people feel isolated. So it makes them either A, not want to engage with this activity,
Or
they
spiteful.
complete this activity, or they argue with people because there's no leadership involved in that.
Yeah.
I agree.
I get behind that.
Agree.
All right. Well, so,
100%.
but most def, Zay, you've earned your right to come back whenever you want. Like you've kicked butt this episode. So thank you for being here. What is your closing statement for the episode?
Okay. Well, I guess I had the closing statement I can go with is just be well to others, treat them with respect, hear what they have to say, and continue a proper dialogue between each other, and then just make the community better. We don't really get anywhere when we're constantly arguing about which outcome is better for which sort of player you are. It's about understanding what sort of players we all are and how to meet a healthy ground to make sure that we're all having fun no matter what.
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Tower, since you want to gain Guardian rank during the podcast because you think you slick, what's your closing statement?
I wasn't sure if you were gonna see that. I wasn't even sure if I was gonna make it.
Because the Discord Charlemagne bot exposed you, but it's cool. It's cool. What's your
No,
closing statement?
it took Charlemagne 20 minutes before it friggin' exposed me. That's all I'm saying. My closing statement is, as a casual, I always have this idea of, especially when it comes to these nerfs and buffs, wait until they actually become active in the game before we really start making any judgment calls or anything like that. Yes, of course, we all have our opinions, but if something ends up being better for the class or a specific subclass or the community as a whole after it's come out, wait until it comes out. Wait and see. That was my whole message with Strand Titan. Strand Titan came out amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
Despite everyone's bitching. So just take a deep breath, calm your mind and just wait and see. And then start bitching and moaning.
Fair enough. David, how you want to end the episode?
All right. You know what? After thinking about it for a little while, you know what? This is what I want to leave you guys with.
All right.
Remember what it felt like to rise up out of the grave and be a blueberry. Remember that feeling of your first raid, looking at must-have Galahorn and trying to ink your way in and body like checks your loadout or checks your raid report. Remember that feeling the next time you look at a blueberry on your stack team of like 5 people and this guy needs a little bit of help. Remember that feeling and lend a hand. It's time for us Guardians to start being teachers to these new lights. I mean, really. The thing that makes this game so amazing, the thing that makes this game so much fun is bringing in these new players and building community. When more of us play together, the more fun we have together.
Right.
It's no fun to be at each other's throats.
With the part where you said it's okay, it's 100% okay to dunk on hunters every opportunity you get. That line right there, I totally agree.
Yes, it is.
Look, if that's what it takes, I will bear the mantle of being dunked on. Just do it with a little grace. High five me first.
Yes.
All right, folks. Don't forget that you can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and Audible, all those great places. Check out the merch shop.cosmodromeradio.com. Get that Guardian Games t-shirt. Titans are going to win. Get that t-shirt. It was great. Shout out to Sid for making the design for us. And we will be back next week with a brand new episode. We will catch you Starside. Peace out.